Thanks so much for joining us today. This is MeWe Fairs, and we have so many online events and in-person events in the Pacific Northwest. And today is our second episode of Cosmic Conversations. Kai, Crystal, and I are here to discuss all kinds of current and alive topics, metaphysics, intuition, cosmos, the world, just all kinds of different things. So we'll introduce ourselves and share a bit about who we are and a bit about the background that we bring. And then we're open. It's open for general Q&A. So any questions you have, we're happy to explore those. And we'll see a theme may emerge for today. Likely it will as we wander different directions. And it's excited to be all together. All right. Who wants to jump in and share more of their background and things that you bring
I'll go
today?
first this time.
Great.
I'm Kai Bertrand. I'm a Hawaiian Kahuna, which is the Hawaiian version of a shaman. I've been able to see angels, demons, and other things that I don't even have names for from the time I was an infant, and have been involved in the occult and the supernatural since then. I'm a mentor, an author, a speaker. I'm an energy healer, and that is my primary focus. Is I deal with energy, all kinds of energy in different ways, different frequencies, different vibrations, all that good stuff. It is the thing that I am most excited about, that I have the most fun with, and and the thing that I like to experiment most with. That doesn't mean I don't know other stuff. I know lots of stuff because I've been around for a long time and I've talked to a lot of people. And what I like about what I get to do is I get to have these types of conversations with different people, learn different things, and build on that knowledge. Because really, that's what we're all doing, is like we're taking what we learn from other people and building on it and sharing it and growing it and changing it and making it work for us. And that's what I enjoy the most. And that's why we're doing this. So yeah, for me, I like to help people. I like to help people see their possibilities.
Hmm.
That's the fun part for me too.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Kai. Crystal, you want to go?
Yeah. Great intro, Kai. Um, my name is Crystal Novak. I'm a psychic reader, conscious channel medium, and I also do energy work. I've been doing, I call it this work of service for over 40 years. Um, and I have a fairly strong background in a lot of esoteric knowledge. I'm also like astrology and can read charts, and I'm fascinated by astrology as well. Um, And I have to echo a lot of what Kai said in that I love learning new stuff. I love it because it expands my perceptions of things and gives me an opportunity to experience things in a different way than maybe I haven't before, which in turn gives me more knowledge and more experience to things, and then I can put that in my toolbox. Um, I also like helping people, especially like when they get one of those aha moments and it just clicks for them. And then I'm like, perfect. I love when that happens. That's really exciting to me. Um, yeah, there we go. Thanks.
That's great. And I'm Laureli Shimayo. I run the MeWe Fairs events, and I'm also an intuitive eye reader. I do what I call body psychology coaching, and I love to apply this work to matchmaking in particular. So when I read your eyes, I think we all read eyes all the time. So when you think about meeting someone with dark sunglasses, where you can't see their eyes, so much is missing. And then as soon as you see their eyes, there's so much there. So I'm reading eyes the same way I believe that we're all reading eyes, basically reading the energy. Like eyes are a window to the soul. We're picking up a ton about each other. I use a set of archetypes that I call thrive types to describe what I see in people. And it's a way of helping it be more tangible. I'm also doing more of an emotional read and a read of your body at the same time that I'm reading your eyes. And that's what I call body psychology. There are ways that I'm using my own body experience and my own emotional experience, like mirror neurons, reflecting what's happening for you. And I have a map of what different areas in the body are often connected to emotions. So it's a way I'm attempting to get a sense of what you're experiencing, where my aim is to have you be authentic and true, to honor yourself, and to make choices that take you on your journey, on your soul path journey. So I'm able to recognize this based on the archetypes and the patterns where you might be blocked, things you might be able to focus on to open up and to be more of you. And I love to do in terms of coaching, really answering questions and helping you find your path, asking and answering questions. And then for matchmaking, people are often motivated to grow through things that otherwise are really hard for them to face when they're so interested in a deeper, better romantic relationship. And so I use that context to help people find better partners, ideally to help them find a soulmate, and also simply to help them grow through things. I love how much we're able to open up and shift things from that deep desire to be seen and to be met and to really connect with someone else. Where my primary aim is to help people grow and be authentic. Part of how this whole experience of cosmic conversations came together, and thanks so much, more people are joining us, is whenever it happens to be quiet or at a moment at the fair, people that are near each other, and I'm usually running around doing all kinds of things, so I only get this in bits and pieces. But like Kai and Crystal are often next to each other, and they have great conversations with each other about deeper stuff that we usually don't just give ourselves time to talk about. And so Cosmic Conversations is an opportunity for us to talk about these deeper things with each other. A number of you in the audience are also practitioners. And so it's a way for us to have these bigger conversations with each other, bigger and deeper conversations, learn from each other, learn from how we experience our work, learn from the different kinds of things that come up with individual clients in a way that's still honoring them and confidentiality, but really learning from the experiences of working together. So we're all better and better as we do this. So that was some of the prompter for having these conversations. I'm happy to have you all here for this. And yeah, Kai and Crystal, anything else you want to share about yourselves or more of the why we're here and what we're doing in this process?
I'm going to do a shameless plug for Kai. Kai just got interviewed by Margaret Smith, who has her own business, which is called I Love It When, and she interviews people from the community, primarily metaphysically involved, and then does a podcast. So she just dropped a podcast the other day, which her and Kai talked for about an hour and a half. It's super interesting, has lots of stuff in it. So if you're curious, you can go to I Love It When on YouTube and you will find that conversation there.
It's great. It's great.
Well, thanks for that. It was a lot of fun actually
Yeah.
having that conversation with her. I mean, it was like, oh my gosh, 2 hours have gone by. I'm like, wait, I'm like, we need to hang up now.
Yeah, it was really cool. I enjoyed it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so
All right.
podcast being
So
another
I
version
guess,
of how we have these kinds of conversations, but podcast is usually just two people. And here we're doing it more as a group.
Mhm.
Okay.
yeah. I guess that the thing that was it's interesting that you brought it up during the Facebook live, Laura, like because you were saying how you live in both worlds, right? With metaphysical stuff and in like what's called the real world or whatever. And I think it's interesting that um the metaphysical community seems to be like divided on that because there are a lot of people who are like, I don't watch the news, I don't read newspapers, I don't, any of that. And for the most part, I don't, just because it's just not for me. I don't find it interesting, I guess you could say. But that doesn't mean that I don't understand the energy of stuff and that I don't feel things happening. And then, so for me, what will happen is like I will feel something or I'll sense something, and then I'll actually go looking in the news, like, okay, what is this? And then I'll like, okay, it's that. That's what this is. But a lot of people are like, nope, I won't do it. And then there was another practitioner. This was before the election. She was kind of, we were at a point where the veil was really thin. This is like near Halloween, I guess, because the election was the beginning part of November. And so she was like gathering her ancestors together to kind of like, work some magic, do some power, kind of thing for setting intentions for the future. And what she did is she asked her ancestors to kind of like influence the election, right? So people would vote a certain way or something. And I was like, why would you do that? Like, you have all this power that's available to you to use for something amazing, and you choose something like that. I mean, because to me, and this is strictly my point of view, like worrying about who occupies the White House is small potatoes compared to the bigger issue of everything else that's happening. It's like you could have used that energy towards like removing the energy of war from our planet, like removing the apathy from our planet, regarding the lives of other people. I mean, like there's bigger issues where that energy could have been focused. So I was just like, you need to think bigger about where you put things, not just and that's our human tendency, right? Like we focus like on little things that don't always in the long run matter. I mean, it's important to kind of pay attention to what's around you, but at the same time, it's like some of us get too involved in stuff and forget there's a higher purpose for what we do. And so I think I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, just kind of see where everybody's at on that.
Yeah, it's great. I know for me, 'cause my energies compared to yours, I'm a little bit uh smaller focused and more so I just am. And so when you talk about the much bigger things, it gets like so like I don't know how to be with that, and so I have to bring it down. And I definitely pay attention to the news. Like I read HuffPost almost every day, and it's I have a question personally of I don't play any games because I know that I get addicted to games. So I'm kind of addicted to the news and kind of a little like games maybe. So like how is it that
Mm.
I genuinely want to read and know what's going on? How much does it really serve me and how much is it addiction? And then, so I also and I am uh I guess we call it like devil's advocate. I'm very much a fan of like playing with different sides of things to like see where we learn and where we go. And so like I would play with, well, I think who's in the White House matters in that I really feel some fear that maybe, I have to be super liberal. Like maybe, like, will there be a democracy here? Like, I feel like what's going to happen here in the next bit matters. And so it matters. It matters in my life personally. It matters in how much we all could do our work out in a big public way. Even if we still have a democracy, that still might get more challenging. I just got rejected from one of the, like one of the online tools just the other day because of the kind of services that I do. And I know other colleagues that have gotten rejected off of various service platforms because of the work that we do. So, how much can we make an impact individually and as a community? To me, matters about who's in the White House. And I get that the issues are bigger or may matter more, but like if I'm not in tune enough, I can't see the impact of it. It feels futile. So in that way, I pull down smaller to so I can feel an impact and feel the motivation to keep going and to do other things. But I'm also kind of playing with the other side of this. Mm.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. For me though, I always look at it like, you know, this too shall pass. It's
It
like
totally might.
well, I mean, because when you think about like all the stuff I mean, like, even the great city of Rome fell 3 times, right? So it's just a matter of time, really. I mean, nothing lasts forever. Nothing. Like no one ever thought that the Berlin Wall was ever going to fall. It did. No one ever thought that, Russia was ever going to, they did. Like you just don't, we can't always predict time. Time is always a factor, but it will fall. It's just a matter of time. So for me, I like to focus on the underlying things, like focusing on the fear, because that's what causes all the stuff to happen, is all the fear that's underneath it. So
Mhm.
I send energy towards, releasing fear, helping people find the out that they're looking for, helping people to realize that, you know, that their world is this big when it's really this big. Um, so that's where I mean, so I and but I do pay attention to like small details as well, as far as like, yeah, it does matter who's in the White House to a certain degree because, all these things are going to affect us. There's no doubt about that. But I don't look at it as, like, oh my gosh, I don't look at it in terms of fatalistic point of view. I look at it like, okay, that's what it is for now. I just need to figure out a way to make it happen because there are other people who are looking at other venues. In other words, like there's more than one way to do something. There's more than one way to achieve something. So we just need to find it. I don't
And I
know.
just
What about you, Crystal? What do you think?
and just before you go, I just want to throw in now too, for anyone that goes back to watch this later, this is the week where all the fires have been in LA. So there's similar things like to talk about in terms of that. But yeah, go ahead, Crystal.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like I have a foot in two different worlds. Like I'm here, I'm incarnated. This is a society I've participated in. Um, and as such, I have certain social responsibilities so that I'm a clean member uh, in our world. But at the same time, I also look at the fact that I also am here to experience spirit in human form. And I focus a lot of my attention more on that. I focus my attention on what is mine to do, what I know I can do, what I, for lack of a better word, have control over, because that's the only thing I do have control over is how I respond to something. I don't watch a whole lot of news because so much of it is fear-based. Um, and it's gotten away from just being somebody reporting facts. It's gotten into opinions. It's gotten into whole bunches of stuff being said as truth that isn't truth. And it's become very polarized. Um, and people are very emotionally invested in some of their viewpoints, and they can't hear anything other than that. That's one of the downfalls of if you don't have a strong personal presence within yourself, you can get sucked into something and that becomes your identity. And the more that that's your identity, you can't use logic to talk somebody out of that. It's a deep emotional attachment as well. Um, so like I said, I do what's mine to do. I have a daily practice, which includes probably similar to what Kai's talking about, which is different prayers and stuff that I do to for support of us as whole of humanity for our next spiritual evolutionary steps. And I feel that's part of the reason why there is so much chaos right now, is we're in the process of growing and expanding and looking towards a more conscious way of being. And I think that's why there's such turbulence as well in the world, because a lot of the old ways are dying or being forced to look at themselves and they're backed into a corner. And that's when something fights the hardest, is if you back it into a corner. So I think in a way we're on the point of the spear. And part of my work is to do the stuff I was just talking about so that when something huge is going on, that I don't go, the sky is falling, run around freaking out and feeding that energy. No, I'm staying grounded. I'm holding to my practice. And it's so there's two ways it's happening. It's what's impacting me as an individual and then what's impacting me as part of the greater whole. Um, so uh, like I said, I'm not a big consumer of news. So I mean I'm aware of what's going on, but I'm not glued to my social media to find out what's the latest thing that's happening.
Yeah. And I tend to be choiceful about the news that I read. Like I read HuffPost, as it seems to be a
Mhm.
little more moderate or more liberal for me. But I definitely know,
Yeah.
I know a ton about what's going on, and I look at lots of different sections. And maybe I'm feeling that I don't feel it energetically separately. I feel it a little bit more through data. Maybe yeah, like what might be happening out in the world. And I do
Mhm.
have opinions about it, and I do let myself get emotionally connected to it at times. I know someone else in the chat mentioned the fire. Maybe I want to say a little about the fire, kind of as an example of some of this. So my dad happens to live in LA, and he's like he lives in between where two of the fires are, and he was in get ready to evacuate zone, but he hasn't had to evacuate, and I don't think he will with the way things are changing. Um, but my partner was asking me about how do I feel about it? Am I worried about it? Do I want to call him and talk to him? And like I didn't need to call and talk to him about it. I just like she's worried that I'm dispassionate and connected. There's a question of like, do I have so much trauma? Do I shut down? Do I think I'm autistic. Like, do I shut off some of my feelings, emotions that way? There are other things like I watch people, I just see something, I just start crying immediately. Like I'm very emotionally connected. But with something like that, I feel like I'm just like riding the wave of what it is and like just see what it is. Like I don't like I get a little more practical in the everyday of like what action can I take right now? Like I helped my friend write some letters that went out to people to get them to vote for the election. I write some things on the post. I talk about some things. I do forward some other posts, and when I've had resources, I donate some money. But there's some steps I take. There's tons more I could do that I don't do. but I do some
Yeah.
things, and I feel like awareness and conversations matter. But then, like the fire, I don't get all caught up in it. But at the same time, I ask questions like all the events that I run during these few days. Do I talk about the fire? Do I talk about sending intention and energy? I also, like one question I mentioned with my partner that I generally don't talk about in public too. Like, I, and for me, this is looking at the whole system in a still a small way, Kai, not like in the big, big things, but we as a society don't really talk about, do we always rebuild? Or does it make sense not to rebuild sometimes? The way that we're changing
Mhm.
our planet,
Mhm.
we're in places where there's risk by the water in earthquake zones, including, volcano zone and earthquake zone here in Seattle where I am. And when do we choose to rebuild and when is it not cost effective for all of us? And where are we really sending all of us down because we don't face that in some bigger way? So anyway, I wonder about all those things and I don't necessarily know where to go. And I don't want to bring up too many things, but it's like I know people that have been very directly personally impacted. I don't know of anyone personally at the moment. But everyone I know, their properties are okay. Clearly, so many people are impacted. I went to Caltech. I know tons of people there. They've been so impacted in the fire in Altadena. Like, maybe, and I don't remember where I was. We were in something the last few days, and someone said, like, well, I know who it was. One of our events the last few days, someone said no one could have predicted the fires in LA. Well, that seems not true to me. Like, it was just, the few days before, I was talking with my dad about how much plant matter there was and the dryness and the winds, and like, oh no, and then poof, 2 days later, there are the fires. And well, we can't, and some of us practitioners, we believe in, I think all the ones that I'm connected to, we look at the waves of how things are moving and what's likely in the future and being aware of what some options are and making choices. And at the same time, we don't necessarily believe in predicting the future. So anyway, I'm bringing up tons of issues all in here. So there's a mix of all kinds of things that to me are related to this conversation.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense with everything. I mean, like and it was kind of like the same thing when, they had that fire in Maui and everyone was just like, "Oh my gosh, it's horrible, blah blah blah." And I was like, stuff happens. It happens. Like the conditions are right. This is what happened. The buildings in Lahaina were very, very close together. So and the trade winds are always blowing. So the fact that it spread and it spread so quickly, I was not surprised. People in Hawaii would not have been surprised. That's just what happened. Um, the question about rebuilding, that's a really good question. Because I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that come into play with that stuff, which is people are like, well, of course I have to rebuild. That was my house. And I'm like, yeah, but look at the land. Maybe it's time to let it go wild for a bit and recover, that kind of thing. But oh no, I can't do that, but I own that. And so from a metaphysical perspective, like, and I will do this with LA. I did this in Lahaina, which is I basically just kind of sent energy to the land
Mhm.
so that it will recover. And, because basically like all the life was burned off of it, right? And so, um, yeah, so just basically I just sent energy to the land itself, and then I sent energy to the people itself, the people who were like, I wouldn't say suffering because I didn't feel like there was like true suffering, just this sense of like, oh, like disappointment and like this, this was our town and I feel bad about that. So I sent energy for the people to use however they felt they needed to, to help them do whatever they needed to do. And I did the same thing for Ukraine, and I'm gonna do the same thing for LA, which is like just basically just send energy to the area and just let it do whatever it's gonna do. So the people who are not feeling great about it can use that energy to make themselves feel better, give them some ability to do whatever it is they need to do. And, for the first responders or the emergency people to give them a little boost to continue doing what they're doing and to help people who are about to make decisions based upon emotion and not upon logic to like have a little space to so that they can make logical decisions that are for the best and not necessarily based on emotion. Because sometimes we don't make our best decisions when we're like keyed up and we're emotional and we're, upset about things. And so I think that that's what I would do. I would just send as much energy to the area, as much positive and loving energy as I can to the area. Then that way, whoever's there and whoever wants to access it, it's available for them. With the understanding that there's some people who won't tap into that energy because they just don't want to, or they refuse it, or that for whatever reason. It's just I send the energy and people can use it if they want to. And I think that that's probably the best thing that we can do. Because I know for for me, and this is related a weather thing, is that whenever there's like this potential tsunami that's about to hit Hawaii, we've like we used to hear about it all the time. Like, okay, don't we got tsunami warning, blah 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 blah. And then what happens is like, they have like the wave gauge that's like way out to sea, the buoys, right? That have the water gauge on it. And since we've had this modern system where everybody is notified immediately, Hawaii has yet to be hit with a tsunami. And the reason is it's because like all the people of power in Hawaii recognize that what's happening, and they redirect the power of the water back out to sea so it never hits. So the entire time that I've been alive, which is close to 60 years, there's never been a tsunami in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And so because that's working with the element of water and understanding how it works. So in terms of fire, we just need to figure out like and this is conceptual. Figure out like how to redirect that energy so that the fire dies out and doesn't spread. I don't know how to do that, but just as a conceptual, like let's think about how the properties of fire, how it works, and how that energy can be redirected. And then maybe that will actually help in some way. I don't know. I'm
Right
just,
in the moments.
yeah, I'm just spitballing here. I don't know.
Oh, I want to mention too, just so it's here in the space. So by talking about this as an overall thing, I'm not meaning to ignore that for any individual that has knows someone that's died or has lost property and lost everything that they own, right? It is a huge tragedy in their life and a
Yeah.
big deal. And there's the gratefulness for still being here for those that are, and like grounding and being real with what's here and being able to take steps that are in front of us too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I I also think that as a society, we don't experience disasters very much. I mean, if you think of indigenous peoples that lived on the plains, what did they do when it was tornado season, right? I mean, what do they do when it's 6 feet of snow outside in the wintertime? What do they do when there's floods, famine, disease, that type of thing? We have exerted a lot of effort to not have uh, catastrophic events if we can possibly do it. Meanwhile, the Earth is doing her thing. Um, and she's got her own karmic path and her own evolutionary path that she's walking. Um, so it's kind of a narrow balance sometimes between allowing for the fact that we live someplace where there's some things we don't control. We have no control. And again, I wanted to also definitely support what you just said, Laureli. This is not to sound, all flippant about people that are involved in any of these events, because it is terrifying. I mean, your home did burn to the ground, or you lost a family member or pets, or everything you had is now just some charcoal. Um, and that's a real blow. And to be able to come back from that, yeah, that's hard. Um, and as you said, you also mentioned something very important as well. Is it exactly for all the places that get flooding? Is it makes sense to go back and rebuild in a flood zone? And then you get all the economic drivers behind that and all the people that have ties to that for whatever reason, that's how they're making money, or that's where they're losing money, and meanwhile, Joe Blow is just trying to figure out where am I going to sleep tonight. Um, and it gets down even then to a survival level. There's a lot of different places of input coming in from all different directions. So I really agree with Kai was saying, is that if I can send energy and do to the people that are involved and also the land as it's involved, then that's a level of consciousness that is known beyond this physical plane. And it creates a structure as well, I feel, for higher energies to come down here as well, because we have said, yeah, I'm doing this thing. I'm opening myself to pulling my consciousness and my intent and focusing energies here to this place. And that allows for the higher energies to come through as well and be able to uh, be utilized when they come through. Um, yeah.
Yes, and I like the ideas energetically. I'm starting to like feel more connection to the people and to the land,
Mhm.
and where I feel more compassion and more in my heart. And at the same time, I'm not caught in the drama. And I know some
Yeah, and I
people,
think
oh, go ahead.
no, Isaac, and I think it's important that we always, that we always focus on that. Like it's always people first.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily about the economic impact. That's a funny thing I've noticed about when watching the news on some of this stuff. They're like, it causes millions of dollars of damage. And I'm like, I don't care about that. Like, how are the people? How are the animals doing? How are the pets doing? Like what, like our family's still separated. Like what that's what I care about when
Yeah.
I see stuff like that. I'm like, I don't care about billions of dollars in damage. I'm like, cement can be replaced. I don't care about that. And so it's interesting how we direct our energy, like how the news programs tend to draw our focus to things that are not what's really important. I mean, not to say that, billions of dollars, that, well, that's an attention getting figure, but at the same time, it's like, what about the people? I mean, like when they had Hurricane Katrina, it's like it took them years to figure out how to like get stuff together and figure things out and getting families back together. And some people left and they've never returned because it was so traumatic for them. I'm like, that's a lot of emotional and physical toll on the people. And I mean, and that's true for, that's happening in LA now. I mean, people are just like stunned that their town doesn't look anything like it used to. Their lives are, a lot of people, their lives are completely disrupted. And how does that feel to them? Like we don't hear about that kind of stuff. That's considered like a human interest story or something. And I'm like, no, that's the important story. So,
The
And
billions, the, the billions of dollars almost in a way is too almost such a surreal number that it it's hard to even wrap your brain around. I mean, you'll hear it, okay, that's a number, but like you were just saying, the average person is not concerned that it's going to cost billions of dollars to do whatever. The average person is like, how am I going to deal with this? And um, and where are the support and safety measures for me to be able to lean on during this time as all this has to go through its process and then get cleaned up and then start the rebuilding process. All these people aren't going to have any place to live. There's over 1 million people that have been evacuated from that area. A lot of those people don't have a place to live anymore, and may not for quite some time. Um, it's just, it's interesting because, like, say, Katrina, for example, they knew that the levee needed more repair work. They knew that the more money had to get pumped into that to make it a better blockage for stuff coming through. And then it's like, no, 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 we don't have the money to do that. That's too huge, big a thing to do. And then they just roll the dice, and who's ever living there, too bad, so sad. And the fact that all these people, they're famous celebrities, have millions of dollars and it didn't matter. Fire doesn't care. I don't care if you have 1 million billion dollars, I'm coming through. And it makes things real concrete real quickly about what's important and what isn't important. And I totally agree with what's been said about it's the people that are important and the animals and the land. Um,
I'm trying to figure out if I can get a number of like how many homes were burned, have been burned in LA so far. I think about it as and it's, yeah, someone mentioned in the chat, right, that hearing about the magnitude of the damage, like as a yardstick, like for me, it is like a bit of a yardstick. So there's so many people that don't have a place. Well, they've been evacuated. So many people have lost their homes and they can't go back, or the ones that can't go back, right? There's all the smoke damage. So many homes that don't exist. Many people had places where they worked that they can't work now. People from LA travel all over, so that's going to be a little diffused, right? So people from other places would have traveled to those places to work. But so for someone that's lost all their property and their place to live and they no longer have income, like as a society, what do we do about that? Like how do we hold that? Because like I like to look at the idea of how sustainably and unsustainably we're doing things. So like in New Orleans, it's like the where we choose to build is kind of crazy. I live up here, right in a log cabin on the woods, right? So there's fire hazard up here, and there's the bear hazard up here, and like all kinds of things. But like all the choices that we make of where we are and how we do things and how sustainable it is or isn't. And so for me, part of the looking at the damage and the magnitude of the damage and how practically to we take care of each other, take care of all the people that are directly impacted and what choices do we make going forward so we're sustainable. To me, it's growth of the whole, and to me this gets connected metaphysically of how are we growing and getting more conscious and how are we supporting us doing that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because
I
like
mean,
just going back to the way it was and rebuilding, it's like not facing and not growing, and it's a bit of a scarcity and oh, we have to put everything right back.
yeah. Well, we've kind of been getting some wake-up calls over the last few years. I mean, COVID was like a global, everybody go to your room, time out, um, and how everybody dealt with that. And everybody wanted to go back to normal. And you can't go back to normal because normal, that was a huge stepping stone into a whole different way of being and a lot of things where we had to adapt in order to keep going and making things still kind of hang together as we waited for that to finally ebb back enough where we could get back into the world more. We are having greater and greater disasters happening. Um, and they're happening, probably we're more interested because they're happening in our country as opposed to a massive typhoon in the Philippines, for example, and mudslides and stuff that, you know, people died. Uh, Other countries around the world, same kind of thing. But it does bring home these issues that sometimes we just don't think about or want to deal with, or people say we can't afford it, and are not willing to put resources into conservation, into having more safety nets for social services for when there's these kinds of things that happen. I don't know if a state like California, do they have a slush fund for if there's a big fire and people need help?
Well, in my experience is that usually those programs is that it's like floods. I know I was in Boulder when the flood happened, is that usually there's money available to borrow that still has to get paid back. It's not a lot of money that's given. And then, yeah, so how are we absorbing the cost? Who has the cost of that? Some people have insurance, but then again,
Well,
there's so much damage. The insurance companies go bankrupt and like we don't have a way of supporting us
well,
through this.
I don't want to talk about the
Yeah.
insurance company because that'll just get me on my soapbox. So, but yeah, we do have FEMA. I forgot about that. FEMA is there, and you don't have to repay that money. Um, but it just kind of is like pol humanity versus money. I mean, people say, oh, or whoever says we can't afford to do that. And it's like, well, we can't afford not to do that. This isn't slowing down. Climate change is not slowing down. It's showing up more and more all the time. I'm from the Northwest, and I'll tell you what, there's never summers up here that we had 110 degrees temperature in Seattle. That's like, no, that never happened. We used to have colder winters and milder summers, but that's all out the window now. Um,
Yeah.
the Midwest with flooding and these crazy storms that are happening. Um, 70 degrees in New York and 12 degrees in Tennessee at the same time. It's like
Yeah,
in the
so
winter, it's like,
so one of my
yeah.
teachers used to talk about the one-way street, like something is a one-way street, and really like all of life, all of our experience is a one-way street. Like all these
Mhm.
examples we've talked about how we don't go back, like we're on a pathway and things are changing. So maybe there's a way to bring this back to more of the cosmic conversation again too of
Yeah.
we're here in human bodies, we're part of societies, we are living or false living, not sustainably the way we are, and humans in the context of the larger whole and what journey we're on here with those of us that are on Earth. And so how to like be focused on my tendril of spirit and my own life and the evolution of my contribution and the big picture. Like if I get too caught up in the big picture, I'm not focused on the responsibility of my tendril. I think of all like tendrils of spirit, each of us in that way, all one. So how do I connect to the cosmos and be connected to what I'm responsible for here? And where do I put my attention?
I think we have to be able to fluctuate, and function at those three different levels. That's like when you're like you're reading something, right? Something's up close and you can look at it and you're focusing and your attention's right here. And then if you're looking at your computer, then your attention is in this level. And then if you're looking, up or further away, then your attention's out there. So I think we have the capacity to go back and forth depending on what's going on, depending on what our priorities are, right? Like I said earlier, like I'm currently rising bread, right? So in a minute, I'm gonna have to get up and go put that in the kitchen. That is like the minor little thing, but at the same time, or I can also switch and I can send energy to anybody at any time across the world for anything. So it's not like it's one or the other. It's like we have to, I think that's part of the challenge of us incarnating in this lifetime is that we have to be able to switch gears and focus our attention here for a short time and then look at the big picture kind of stuff and then look at short term, medium term, long term goals and that kind of thing, like, and be able to kind of put our attention and energy in different pockets, so to speak. And in some sense it's like juggling balls at the same time, right? It's like there's like, okay, keep that plate spinning, okay, spin that one a little bit. But I think we can do it, and it's just a matter of like how much of that you want to take on, because everybody is different in like how many plates they can spin at a time, right, before things start crashing. But like for instance, like you, Lorelai, like you've got like a whole buffet of plates spinning, right? So I feel like I couldn't do half of what you do. But at the same time, like, but for me, I can do a few at a time. And and part of what I do is kind of like help other people keep their plates spinning to a certain degree as well, with the things that they're working on. And so it's just us putting our energy where it's most needed, and um and in whatever way we can. I mean, because for some people it's like, okay, I don't pray, I don't send energy, but what can I do? Like that's when, okay, I'll donate some money, or I will volunteer my time, or whatever. And I think that we have to just, our how we feel about things, just go with the best of intentions, even though, the old phrase about the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Um, but go with the intention of the highest good for all concerned, and then approach whatever it is from that perspective. And then I think our whatever we can contribute to something will then become clear.
And, and I like what you said about being nimble. So I think of like what perspective we're able to hold. And we all have capacities in different places, but being able to be nimble to change it,
Yeah.
right? And what's of service in that moment.
Yep. Yep, yep.
And bread in the oven may be what's of service in a moment for you.
It will be tomorrow if we don't have bread. I'll be like, what? Um, but yeah, I think it's and I think that's the biggest thing about energy and our energy is paying attention to where we put it.
Mhm.
Like, because it's that thing about, energy flows where attention goes. So if you're not focusing or if you're not paying attention to where your energy is going, then, you could get what comes back to you could be unexpected. And we need to pay attention to that.
And just a reminder, those of you in the audience, if there's something that you want to share about this, you're welcome to unmute and share something. You're welcome to put something in the chat. You're welcome to ask questions about all this.
Mhm.
And I know we've been wandering around a bit here on the practical real world and connecting that back up with the reason why we're all here together to talk.
Yeah.
May I say something about the fires?
Yeah.
Um, I'm not there. I'm very far from LA. Um, but I do follow the news. I'm from Ukraine, so I follow them almost religiously. And the one thing that I've heard was it was an arson, at least one of the fires.
Mhm.
So when the comment was made about nobody could predict the fire, well, at least one person could, the one that started it. Okay, let's put it this way. So, if it was an arson, indeed, because the information is a little murky, and I tried to fact check it, and there isn't much about it, unfortunately.
There's
So, yeah, and it irks me to no end when people are panicking about whether it's election or fires or the war in Ukraine or anything else, and they come to you as a reader and be like, "Have you done any readings on that?" Um, it's above my pay grade. Okay.
I didn't quite understand
I-
your question. Could you say that again, please?
So, like when something that makes the whole community population panic, and then someone comes to you and be like, "Have you done any readings on that subject?" Whether it's, the election or any natural disaster or anything else. Um, because for me, I'm like, I'm a little too attached to the subject
Hmm?
to be able to deliver a unbiased reading.
right,
Yes.
Okay.
particularly for Ukraine, because that's where you're from.
And that too. And I have been asked that. And I said, I'll just rather do something that I can um to you know do my part. I'm just a little person. I only have, two hands, two feet, and one head, and that's all I got. And if I can contribute to ease the pain in Ukraine, I will. If I can sign some documents for somebody to come here, I will. You know, um, but asking me to do a reading about when the war in Ukraine is going to be over, um, that's what I joke out of it. I'm like, it's above my pay grade.
Yeah. And
Okay.
it's not, yeah, and it's not, I don't think it's possible anyways. There's too many timelines that are moving. There's too many variables that are moving. Um,
Yep. Yep.
so yeah, I don't think it's possible to predict when it's going to end. You've
Mhm.
got political pundits all over the place that every time somebody makes one little move, they're all now talking about what this means insofar as the conflict is in Ukraine. Um, so yeah, and if I try to do a reading on something like that, it's gonna, I mean, I feel like I have a great connection to source, but it still comes through me. And like
Mhm.
you said, if I have an attachment to something, like sometimes somebody will want me to look at something for them, and I know they're super attached to the outcome, and then it's hard for me to try and maintain some neutrality about it because I know they're really wanting something to hear something, and then
Mhm.
there's pressure. Um,
Yeah. You're like a prism, and the readings are kind of coming through you.
mhm,
And when they do come through you, what does the light do when it comes to the prism? It breaks, right? It bends.
mhm,
So you may try to force the bending one way or the other if you are too attached to the subject that you're doing the reading for,
mhm,
you know? And we call it bias. I call it putting it through my own prism,
Mhm.
right? Um, because if I don't care that much about the subject, I probably will deliver a much more objective reading
Yes.
than I will if I am subjective about something.
Yeah.
And that's where mm-mm, nope.
Yep.
Don't ask me. You can ask me if
And
I've done it, and I'll say no.
And the direction that Crystal started to go in her answer too is it matters if I feel a connection with the person that I'm reading, and it matters if I
Mhm.
feel something about the relationship. So even if we're a long-term client where I don't have a personal connection, but if I care too much about the relationship with that client, I'm filtering and worried about like bringing in my own stuff as to whether I share directly what comes through, my interpretation
Yes.
of it, all those things.
Somebody will say, "Hey, did so and so pass? I like to know if so and so is alive or not." It's like, okay, that's super neutral. Um, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, what's
it's
going
some of
on?
it in a way, it's gonna sound kind of bad, but in a way, it's none of our business. I mean,
That's true.
I only have so much power and so much influence in this world. And like I said when we first started, the only thing I really have control over is me. So I can choose to send positive energy to a situation. I can choose to hold positive energy for people that are involved and stuff like that. But to make such a sweeping, massive read with so many variables, that's just that's not my ballpark. That's not something that, and actually I don't want to do. Um, yeah, I'm just not open to doing something on that massive of a scale. That's not how I function. So, um,
Yeah, I can't read that wide, honestly, because when I try to tap into that, it's like there's like so much information
yeah.
Mm.
because like things are constantly changing, because it's like, okay, if this person makes this choice, then it will change this way. If this person makes this choice, it will change this way. So there's
Mhm.
just too much information to sift through. So basically when I try to tap into something huge like that, like all I hear from my guides is like, it's not time yet. Like there's too many things in play to get
Mhm.
a definitive.
Mhm.
So just let it lie for right now. So
Yeah.
that's what I do. I just was like, it's there's too many things happening at this point to predict which way it's gonna go.
Yeah.
And while you're busy doing the reading, the missile comes and strikes another building. You know what I mean? Whoops, things changed all of a sudden. You weren't even done yet,
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I
and
mean, sometimes it's
like that.
also just a matter of like, okay, do I go left or right?
Mhm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like that makes it's like, okay, the this person who could like really affect something, like if they go left, they die. If they go right, they live. That changes a whole bunch of stuff. So
Mhm.
you just, until things kind of get into a more sustainable pattern, I guess you could say, like it's hard to read stuff like that.
Yeah,
At least
it
I find it
constantly
so.
fluctuates. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of thinking of each of us as a prism. It applies really well.
Yeah.
I didn't do very well in physics class, but the prism experiment was one of the most exciting ones we had in school.
Well, but we have all kinds of examples of it in real life that we can play
Yes.
with. So
Yeah.
it comes out of the theory and
Yeah.
is very real. Yeah. Mm.
So yeah, thank you. I was and again, I know like I'm scraping the tip of that iceberg, but um I have been asked, and it was always it's above my pay grade. Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
let's go back to
So I guess,
the readings around our workplace and that kind
well,
of stuff. Not
well, part of
yeah.
what I go to when people ask questions like that would be, why do you want to know? And I go into what's personal about
Mhm.
it, and I go to work with them about what's personal about it. And some people are just caught up
Well,
in all the things and very emotionally connected and caught in the drama. And, there may be something like that and helping them ground and helping them have some tools to not do that. Or
Yeah,
yeah,
and like Crystal had said earlier, like sometimes when people ask you questions, it's like it's almost like it's a loaded question because it's
Yeah.
like they want you to say something in particular.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when I do readings, I'm like, I'm just gonna tell you what I hear. That may not be what you want to hear.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
there's
Yeah.
that too, that expectation. Like, I mean, especially somebody's like, oh, is it gonna be okay? I'm like, eventually, yes. It may not feel like that. Well, you know what I mean? Like that's because
Yes.
that's really how it is. Like at some point it'll be okay. Right now, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like we don't know what the okay is going to look like. Sometimes the okay means that a bunch of people have died.
Yeah.
That that the area is plunged into poverty for a bit. I mean, we don't know what the okay is going to look like. Will it be okay? Yeah. We don't know what that's going to look like though. So having expectations about it doesn't really help anybody. It's like just be open to it, step in where you can and do what you can and recognize again, like Elena had said, like you're one person. You got two arms, two hands, two legs. That's it. Do
Yeah.
what you can do
Yeah.
and then leave the rest to someone else. I mean, if we all work together to do certain things, then lots of things can be accomplished, but all you're supposed to do is just do your part. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yep. Yep. Do what is yours to do.
one others of you in the audience, I know you might be listening, you might not be listening. I think at least one person here maybe doesn't listen to the news, and just wondering how is it for you hearing us talk about these things today, and maybe it's been hard and you've tuned out a bit, or maybe we're helping you have some new skills to be able to be with all that shows up. If anything you want to share, let us know. Yeah, and any other questions you have, anything this makes you think of, anything that arises for you, or something else that you want us to address, let us know. Yeah, and feel free, the one who's been speaking, if you, yeah, I say Alina, if there's something else you want to say, go ahead.
The one thing that I always tell, not even during the readings, just during conversations when the person is in a tough situation, and yeah, you will be okay. The only way out is through.
Mhm.
Okay, you are gonna have to go through that before you reach the way out. There is unfortunately no other way. I don't have the go around for you, you know. Um, and it may be unpleasant, it may be painful, it may be damaging in some parts. Um, you just have to go through. It's like a forest, you have to go through it to get out.
Mhm.
If you're in the middle of the forest, you have to go between those trees and the broken hiking trail, anything, to get out. You know, and there is no sometimes there is no easy answer. Sometimes there is no, oh, everything's gonna be all right. You will be fine. I'm gonna have to go through. Sorry, we all do sometimes.
Yeah. It's
This
a
this is the way
process.
life is.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's a process. And you have to allow the process to unwind and unfold and how it's going to do that. And like you said, the only way out is going through it. But sometimes if we sit with the process and allow it to be what it is, it will teach us a lot of things that maybe we wouldn't have gotten if we were in such a big hurry to get through to get to the other side. Um, I think there's something sacred about being with process and listening and witnessing, being part of that process. Um, and sometimes maybe it's just to show you that you have no control and all you can do is surrender to what is happening and do whatever you know how to do, but you just have to allow it to unfold without expectation, which, it sounds real simple, but it's a lot harder to do in practice, especially if we have a lot of attachment to the outcome. Yeah.
And I'm
Um,
And I'm thinking of an experience of someone that I know where there was so much beforehand and so much worry and so much fear. And I think that the as they're making their way through, it's much easier than they ever anticipated it would be. Guess we don't
Sometimes
know
our
till we know.
fear makes it, yeah, makes something way larger than the actual experience is going to be. Because the mind will come up with any number of things to scare us, sometimes to keep us from doing something, because it's the mind that's afraid, not who we are as spirit. It's our mind that's afraid. Um,
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, and even like in a metaphysical way too, because like we're like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do that. Can I do that? Like, is that going to be really hard? Is that going to be really difficult? And then, and then and I do this sometimes with, students and people I talk to, and they're like, I'm like, oh, just do this. And they go, was that it? Is that all? I'm like, yeah, sometimes it's that simple.
yeah,
Like you're making a mountain out of a molehill. It's like it's really not that big a deal.
yeah,
It's like take a step back, take a breath, and just think about it. And that's why I always tell people like, try not to get all wrapped up emotionally and stuff. Like look at it as logically as you can. Like try to, I realize that, they're like, I really want this, I really want this. I'm like, I get it. But at the same time, it's because you've got all this emotion of wanting and needing and all that kind of stuff that you are kind of not giving yourself the space to really think about a process that you could use.
mhm.
Because some people are like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this thing and it's going to take me 6 months. And I'm like, why is it good? Why does it have to take you 6 months? And they're like, well, that's what somebody told me. I'm like, yeah. And that it might have taken them 6 months. It doesn't have to take you 6 months.
Yeah,
I want to say
yeah,
too, like we're all
That's
fairly
true.
logical people. We're all big thinkers. And so for some people, it may be letting themselves feel it in a different way or take an action step, right? Some smaller action step may help open up a bunch of things. So engaging it really, whatever process helps us get from wherever we are to where things are flowing.
yeah. But
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
yeah, and if you've got yourself too wound up, then you can't hear your own internal guidance because the hamster wheel's going 100 miles an hour and getting you revved up, and then again, like you can't hear, you can't even be aware that maybe another way of doing it is standing right in front of you because you're too overwhelmed and wound up about whatever it is that you're involved in at the time. Um, and again, it's easier said than done, but if you can take that moment, like Kai was saying, and just take a breath, step back for a second, and just ground yourself, just give yourself a little space and stuff and breathe through it. Um, then sometimes you'll find that, oh, there's an alternative that you didn't know about, or it shows up. Another alternative shows up. The more open-ended we can allow the divine to show up, the more greater opportunities exist. If we kind of scrunch them down and they can only show up like this, then there's a whole rest of everything else that you just excluded, so you can have it show up like that.
Yeah, it's like you basically choke off your options
Yeah.
because, the universe is trying to send it to you and it's like, it may come to you through an avenue you didn't expect
Mhm.
or didn't anticipate.
Mhm.
And if you're convinced that certain things can only happen in a certain way,
Mhm.
then the potential is, and if it's not coming that way, that means you don't get it
Right.
because the universe is trying to give it to you in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Switching subjects, but it's similar is like, I've the subject of like twin flames and soulmates have been coming up lately for me. And I'm always telling people, I'm like, don't get hung up on that stuff because you have a twin flame. That doesn't necessarily mean that's like the perfect person because no person is perfect.
Yeah.
And so, and you have to consider the possibility that, your twin flame might be like 85 and you're 35,
Mhm.
or your
And
twin flame might be 10 years old.
I'm going to broaden it a little bit too of no person, no relationship, no situation is ever perfect. Perfect is an
Yeah.
imaginary thing that's not here.
There's no such thing as perfect. It's very subjective. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, this thing of, and I'm like, it's like your twin flame could be an alcoholic. Like, it's like, that's not what you want. Right.
Yeah.
And the possible, you know, and some people kind of view it as like, well, I'll never be happy unless I have my twin flame. I'm like, that is such a crock of shit. I'm like, there are so many people that you could be ecstatically happy with
Yep.
if you would just allow yourself the possibility that there is someone else that you could be happy with.
It's if you go to the grocery store and you're looking for a certain brand of, let's say, beans, and you go down the aisle and your brand of beans isn't there, there's one sitting right there that's got somebody else's brand name on it. It's the exact same product. It's gonna work for you, but no, it doesn't have that special name on it. So I'm just gonna go home without any beans. You're right. We give too much significance to it. It's too overblown. And you can have way more than one twin flame in your lifetime. We meet countless numbers of people that potentially are our twin flames. And like you said, they could be 85, they could be 10, they could be someplace else, and you might not ever run into them. That is not the be all and end all. And again, you're just limiting your options and limiting what your choices can be. Um, it,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this is the same with every
And
it just,
situation in life.
yeah, yeah,
yeah, totally. And that's why it's like, I think we need to figure out again, like what our priorities are. Like, what is it that you want to achieve in your life? And are the people who surround you in your life supporting those things? Because if they're not, then you need to rethink it.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just that's how it, you know, that's the way I look at it. It's like too many people are like, "Oh, but it's so this and it's so that." I said, "Yeah, but it's not supporting you in what you want to do. Why
And if
would you continue to do that?"
and if there's someone in my life that isn't supporting me in something, it doesn't necessarily mean I need to like out of here for the whole person. It's that I need to create enough abundance with other people that really support me in the thing and create enough abundance of energy that's supporting me,
right.
taking me
Instead
where
of
I want to
relying
go.
on that person to give you something that they can't do or won't do, then, like you said, you fill your life with people that are supportive. Um, the When I was going to class one time, we talked about it's like consider yourself to be like spiritual athletes, if you will. And it really matters what you consume to feed yourself, to nurture that spiritual athleticism. Uh, so, what are you physically eating? What are you mentally consuming? What are you emotionally consuming? Um, or who are the people around you? So it's kind of, you can use a metric of when I walk away from this experience, am I feeling fed or am I feeling depleted? And if you're hanging out with people that are not feeding you and you're the one throwing out all the food to help them, then yeah, you need to recheck that and maybe take
I
another look at that whole situation.
want to say, and I approach this from abundance and synergy, and that we together might have more energy than we have individually. So it's
True.
not that there's a finite amount and that someone taking means that others don't have.
Yeah.
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 But then also we also have to look at it from an energy perspective in terms of cords too, because
Mhm.
sometimes the people that we're with, it's like, you know, if you spend all your time with somebody and like by the time you're done talking with them, you're completely exhausted, that means that, you know, they literally have drained your energy. Whether it was intentional or not is a completely different story, but that's part of it is that you spend your time with someone who makes you feel like, you know, you could take on the world afterwards, and then that you both feel that way when you're done. Like that is a solid relationship. That's the type of relationship that you want. That's the type of synergistic energy that you want. So when you feel like either you're exhausted when you've after you've spoken to someone, is like, yeah, that's not necessarily a good relationship. Either that, or, you know, I would tell somebody, well, if it's somebody that you can't disassociate from, like a family member or something like that, then it's like, well, then you need to put a shield up so that you can preserve your energy while you're spending time with this person, so that you don't feel like you're, you know, you need to lay down after you've had a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had me thinking about just a situation I know of where um, a relationship that was mutually supportive or seemed mutually supportive shifted and it's not mutually supportive anymore. And when does it make sense to completely like cut ties and cords? And when does one choose to put in some effort to have there be some mutual choice of that, or what that looks like, or what connections are maintained?
I think it depends on the person. I mean, if you're clear enough that you're recognizing that there's been a shift in the relationship and it's not flowing the way it used to flow, and perhaps in that moment you're recognizing that, and I'm just not saying you, Laurel, I say generically, one might recognize that they weren't setting very good boundaries, or they were being codependent, or they were in the victim, rescuer, persecutor triangle. And when you get that realization, it's like, I can't participate in this relationship how I've been participating because I've been disrespecting myself in a way. I haven't been being uh, good for myself. Um, and then you've got to kind of like do an assessment, I guess you could say, is look at that person like, how likely are they going to be able to hear that I want to talk about whatever this current paradigm is, and will they be open to hearing that? Um,
And I appreciate that you brought up just the persecutor, rescuer. I use different names for it, but that triangle,
yes.
because maybe part of the question I'm asking about is persecutor, because one version of persecutor is to just take off and leave without meeting their responsibility. And then a version of victim or hero could be staying longer than is of service. So this is the
Yeah.
how to feel into, or and use rescuer, how to be rescuer. It could be rescuer or victim to stay longer than it's of service. And so it's kind of
I
a
think you,
choice thing around this. Yeah.
yeah, I think you have to look at if, like, I know personally the dynamic when I was growing up, I had to be a caretaker, and that caretaker is also a rescuer. And that got made to be like, that's your job. So if like you're a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. And so if you go out in the world and you don't know any better, then, I can I can spot somebody 500 miles away that needs to be rescued. Um, but when I started to do the work around that, it was like, and I asked myself this question is, so how does it serve me to continue to rescue people? What's that about? And then I went inside and asked myself those questions and got some answers. And then it made sense to me about why I was doing it. And then I also could see why I can't continue to do it because it's hurting me. It's depleting me and disrespecting myself in ways that um, it keeps me from being more authentic and actually who I am. Um, and it's also a disservice to the other person as well. I mean, if I'm rescuing somebody, it implies that they're a victim and that they don't have any power. It implies that they're not able to make choices or do something for themselves. And it's also a power dynamic. It means I'm one up and they're one down if they're a victim. I'm coming in to help you. Um, and
I
again,
get
I'm
that.
not saying, go ahead.
I have a new
I
way of
just,
articulating my question. So that's why so if one's in a relationship where it's a mess,
mhm,
and there are all these cords,
mhm.
what is the most responsible way to address this? It might not be cutting everything off, where some things are a mess and some things are of service. The other person can feel when the energy is all cut off. Maybe as long as it's not too much of a rescuing and taking on too much responsibility, there's a way of pruning and really sensing what is unhealthy and what's healthy. And so there may be a way of cutting away and keeping some things.
Well, what'll happen is if you change your dynamic, you change your energy, like you just said, selectively pruning or whatever, it's going to impact that other person
Mhm.
because you've changed the flow and you've changed how
Mhm.
things have been going. And so a couple things will happen. Number one, they're going to escalate their behavior to pull you back in to keep this dynamic going, or and get so ornery that you don't want to spend any time with them anyways.
Mhm.
Um,
Right? It may poison the healthy things.
Beg your pardon?
It may
Yeah.
poison the healthy things that we
Yeah,
didn't prune initially.
yeah. Or they'll go, okay, something's changed here, and maybe sit down and realize that they have a part in this as well. It's a lot of times people don't, if they're involved in those kind of situations, they don't think that they're doing anything wrong, that the other person is doing all the wrong stuff and that they're just fine. And if it wasn't for you acting like that, everything would be fine. All the countless times you've heard it. Why are you acting like that? Everything was fine until you started asking questions, or you're just overblowing things, or every time you go and spend time with so and so, you come home and it's everything's are harder now, and
A,
it's
a
all
messy
that
cord
stuff.
is two people holding onto the cord, right? It's not just one person holding onto the cord. A messy cord between two. Both people are holding on. They both are participating.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
again, at least the tool I use to help myself start to be able to unwind and step out of it is, how does this serve me to be doing these actions or making these choices? How is it serving me? Because I believe all our behaviors serve us. They might not be very conscious or very clean, because a lot of the stuff that we learned to survive were come from a little kid place and not an adult place.
Right? I haven't had Lila on screen in forever. So yeah, how is it maybe serving Lila and one of my little kids as opposed to serving me as a whole? Yeah.
Yes. Um, which again, that's a whole nother stance to take, is okay, that's what I invented to stay alive back when I was 5, but that doesn't work anymore. And I want different relationships. I don't want those kind of relationships anymore. And if you don't, then you start to do the work, and then your reality will shift and you will be able to manifest cleaner, more adult relationships. But it's getting down in there and doing the shadow work to figure out what all the stuff I've just been talking about, which is
Yeah,
a process.
yeah. I'm a little more brutal about things.
You don't say.
And what I mean by that is, like, if there is a relationship that doesn't work, like you know, and Lorelai, you're right. Like, you might have a, like, different things about the relationship that work and some things that don't, and the good things can get poisoned or become a form of manipulation and all that kind of stuff, right? So when it comes to just energy cords in general, I cut them all because they can be reestablished.
Mhm.
So you can, like, okay, I'm going to reestablish with this person on this level with this particular energy. Anything else I don't accept. So I don't try to figure out this, and I cut them all, and then I reestablish the ones I want.
Mhm.
And I guess is there like it needs to be done in a relatively like if we use the idea of time, close enough period of time so that the other person doesn't feel the complete cut because that can actually cause mess in the relationship too, right?
Well, I think on an energy level, if a person is like that the relationship is not good, like whether or not you acknowledge it, that's a completely different
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
But for me, I look at it like, if I'm looking at it, if it was my relationship, I mean, like, I know other people view things differently than I do, but in my relationships, if it's not working and it needs to be readjusted, and I've done the conventional, okay, let's try to talk about this, let's try to figure this out, let's, just trying different things, and that doesn't work, I'm like, I just cut everything. And then that way it's like, okay, we're going to start again from scratch.
Mhm.
And if you're not willing to do this, then what's happening right now is status quo. This is where we're
Yeah.
at. And
Mhm.
that just makes things, for me, it's just easier because I don't like messy in that way. I mean, and I understand that relationships can be complicated and they can be messy and they can be lots of things, but at the same time I'm like, they don't have to be
So,
either.
so I'm a little bit more like the mix and some of the messy stuff kind of person in terms of this range. And so where I've used the approach of I want to be with people that allow me to be messy and make mistakes and to recover. I could see then on the other side, I want to be with people that allow me to start fresh, right? So it's
Yeah,
choosing
no,
people that
and
really
that's
allow, like they trust me that I'm doing the best to take care of myself and whatever I need to do, and they're available for whatever is good for both parties and however that happens.
yeah, and but then see, that is a hallmark of a healthy relationship.
Mhm.
because like a healthy relationship will allow you to mess up and to have a fresh start at the same time. It doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily have to be another person.
right.
It's when you have the relationship where you have to be like you either you have to be perfect or you always have to engage in these messed up, weird, unbalanced arguments. Yeah, that I'm just like, no, no, thank you.
Nope.
I do not want that.
Yeah, it's
Ain't
You
great.
know, I
nobody
mean,
got time for that. No.
yeah, well, I mean, it's just it's not good for your energy. And as a metaphysical practitioner, like stability is everything. Because if you don't have some sense of stability, like you have nothing to build on.
Yeah. And then you won't have anything in the tank either. Because it's
Yeah.
all being siphoned off to try and balance a
Mhm.
relationship that really is unhealthy. And both people have to make a contribution to wanting it to have health. It's like a living entity that, to me, a relationship is like a living thing that I have to take care of and I have to spend time with it and put energy into it. And the other person who's involved as well needs to do the same thing. It's not this thing that, oh, we signed a piece of paper and now it's forever after and, we don't have to do anything. It's a done deal. It's like, no, I don't think so, because I'm still committed to my own personal growth and I'm wanting, and it's actually a must have is so does the other person, so that there's room for growth. There's room for the next level. There's room for that kind of relationship to take me someplace where I haven't been before, that I didn't know how to get there. But now that I'm here, I'm like, I didn't know that I could do this until I was hanging out with you and we made a commitment to, like, this is how we're going to interact with each other. And yeah, it's not a, and there's nothing perfect anyways. It's just like you just said, you got to have room to be able to make mistakes. Otherwise,
And,
we don't grow and learn if we can't make mistakes.
and maybe Kai, I've got like just more things kind of playing, ticking about this. So if it's a relationship that's mostly not good, I totally could see cutting everything and then reforming some things. What if it's a relationship that is more good than not good? When does one communicate with the other person before doing this? Not that I would decide not to if they don't want it, but right, we have some
Sometimes
agreements
you
of how we've set
can't.
things up.
Sometimes you can't. It
Sometimes
depends
you
on the
can't,
person.
right?
Sometimes, yeah, because
But like,
sometimes you know that if you,
but can I
they're
just play
gonna,
with like, let's say so
yeah,
the three of us, it's good, right? We're here, so it's generally good. But what if, for example, Crystal, I'm just going to play with you right now. So what if, I just wanted to start fresh with everything, right? And so I would just going to go, we have a good relationship. When is it my responsibility to let you know I'm doing this? When does it lead to a better outcome later if I communicate first?
you can't.
I think it depends, honestly, because I mean, each person is, you know, like so for instance, if you wanted to talk to Crystal about it, about whatever it was, and she's not open to it, then the onus is on you to then take care of yourself.
Mhm.
You know, so if it was me, I'd be like, okay, well, if we're not going to have this discussion about this energy exchange that's not working, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut the cord for myself. And then if in the future, then they become ready to talk about it, and then we can talk about reestablishing the cord. Because I mean, I don't look at it as necessarily like an all or nothing thing. It's more like I might reattach a cord to that person again because we still have a relationship. We still are talking and we still, you know, we still have some interaction, but it won't be as strong. It won't be
Mhm.
as thick, and there won't be as much energy going towards it.
Yeah, so this is where I think that when something is good, maybe there's something about, right, because there's trust that the connection is there. Maybe sometimes there is something about communicating ahead of time allows that trust to continue, right? That I'm going through a cleansing process and the person is spacious to know that. And, right, so I might clean everything off and then reestablish things. Do you see? That's why it just seems like sometimes that might be I'm just looking at gosh, they're staying enmeshed and then cleaning everything off fresh. And I just wonder that communication sometimes might be the best thing to do as long as it's not interfering with doing whatever we need to for our side of
I would,
things.
I would always default to communication, always, as much as I possibly could. And sometimes that other person can't hear it or doesn't want to hear it.
Mhm.
Um, they're too stuck in whatever their stuff is at the moment and they can't hear it. Um, and sometimes you have to just walk away. I mean, sometimes you can't stay
Oh
because
yeah, yeah,
they
yeah,
are
yeah.
they're not willing to haul their own freight in
Hmm.
that particular
Hmm.
situation.
Yeah.
And like Kai was saying, it's like you might still be in contact with them, like you see them at events or something, but that level of deepness where you used to let things be, yeah, it's not
Hmm.
there anymore.
Hmm.
You
Right.
can still be professional and not let them cord the
Mhm.
heck out of you.
But like a healthy cord. So and I know we talk about cords as negative things, and then do you still use the same language as cords for when things are positive and connection, like good connections? Or do you all use different
Yeah,
terms
Yeah.
for it? Okay, different language.
we
Yeah.
interact with each other
Hmm.
and have energy exchanges all the time, and cords
Yeah.
are part of that.
Hmm.
Um, but if it's something where and you know it's not a very good relationship, then yeah, you're gonna probably look and find all kinds of cords that are coming to you that some of them are sneaky even.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, they're behind your back or hidden
Hmm.
or whatever it takes. And like Kai was saying earlier, you can always reestablish a connection if a connection is going to be okay at that point to reestablish. But self-care, I think, is the first rule of the
Hmm.
game. Um,
Yeah. I'm responsible for, I just think of it as tendrils, right? Of all source and all the tendrils of all of beings. Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
responsible for my tendril, first of all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like when you are like from an energy perspective, if you feel like I mean, because we should all just do this anyway, right? Just kind of like give ourselves like an energy bath, so to speak,
Hmm.
and just like get rid of all the energy that doesn't belong to us, take back our own energy, and then and while we're doing that, like we just cut all the cords so that our energy can reestablish as ours, and then we get to choose who we connect to under what circumstances, and that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the other person, whether the relationship between us is good or bad. It's just like just as a mode of self-care. I mean, because there was a shaman I work with, he's just like, yeah, every once in a while you just need to cut everything off and just be an independent being with no connections to anything, just to kind of reestablish your energy base, and then from there you reconnect out into the world, because then in doing so, like you've cut off everything, even the things that you were not even aware you were connected to, that might be draining you in some way that you just didn't notice. So if
But
you remove everything, then that allows you to connect consciously.
I kind of am thinking it at the moment like a holding station. So there's me, and then somewhere outside of my energetic field, there's a holding station. And so there's a way that I would cut everything off and put them in the holding station. And I take whatever time I need, whatever process I need, so that the disconnection isn't necessarily immediately felt. And that then I can choose to reconnect and the others fall away. So I almost think of
Yeah,
it in these
and
stages.
honestly, unless they're really sensitive to energy, most people
yeah,
don't notice.
they're not going to know.
They don't know that you've done it until like, unless like you're in the same room when you do it, and then they go, wait, what was
Well, I
that?
think we're so I think about my clients and I think about the layers of clients and like those of us as practitioners, and sometimes the clients are practitioners. And so we're in a field of people that are very sensitive. So we're in a group that might be more sensitive. So some people might notice quickly. A lot of people won't, and some
But
might.
even
But the thing is, like, they, even if they do, it's, I mean, they shouldn't be taking it personally, because like I said, it's like a form of hygiene in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And if they take it personally, like,
Mhm.
what else is going on in that relationship? Because that means
Yeah.
that there's something that should not be there.
So again, like I have people in the space that are comfortable with other people practicing hygiene. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
exactly.
there are some people who don't. They refuse to cut all the cords and stuff. And I'm like, I was just like, this is like they're literally sucking you dry. And they're like, oh, but I can't.
You
And
can't.
I'm like, okay, that's
I know
free
I'm
will in action.
I'm gonna be one of these people that's never cut all the cords. Some big ones sometimes, but yeah.
Well,
Well,
and the thing is, like, if you don't ever cut cords, you have to think about how much, because like, even though, yeah, we are beings of energy, but to a certain degree, it's finite. because it's running through our human bodies. And so how much, by not cutting cords ever, like how much energy has literally been siphoned away from you that you could have used for something that you wanted to direct it towards. See, so I look at it like it is a responsibility of, like, if you really want to achieve something, like if you're working on manifesting, or if you're working on like your health issues, or or if you're working on building your abilities and things like that, the it's to your benefit to harness all the energy you have so that you can direct it. And if you have all these cords that's literally siphoning all your energy away, there went your power, there went your ability. So to cut all the cords that you don't need is only to your benefit.
And I'll just say for an example, right? So other people are aware of this too. The truth of all this, I can feel directly from me and my own experience that I'm having such sensations in my throat as we are talking about this. Oh my gosh. And it's not the front of my throat, it's like the back of my throat and the top, like as it curves, something curves over the top. Like it's a place where I don't often have a lot of sensations. And oh my gosh, they are strong.
So throat chakra, like communication, it's also the center associated with will. So that's where we get a lot of attack or
Mm-hmm.
a lot of cording is in our throat chakra.
Yep.
Um, I mean, not like the other ones don't get their fair share either, but
Oh,
yeah, but let's cut you off. Let's silence your voice. Let's take away your will. Let's sap it. Let's keeping you whatever so that we can still, we, not me, but them, so that they can still have a tap and get fed.
yeah.
I kind of really don't care if somebody feels that I cut a cord with them. I mean, if they're gonna like lose it because
Yeah.
I cut a cord,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, I don't care either.
it's like, no, that's like, I'm sorry, I just took an energy bath, an energy shower. I washed everything off. I'm going to talk to you tomorrow. Anyways, we already have plans. It's fine that the other person's not gonna cry themselves to sleep that night because I cut a cord with them.
And
Um,
if they do, that's a problem.
and that's their problem. That's the
That's
other way
their
people
problem.
get
Yeah.
back in. They're like, oh, but you cut the
Mm.
cord and I couldn't sleep all night. I was just so bereft. And it's like, wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
I
and
was
I'll just
like,
say too,
here's me
so
playing the violin.
people that are
Yeah.
listening to that have been really enmeshed in this and they're in connection with a lot of other people that have been very enmeshed in this, there might be really very practical consequences for them in their life of making this change.
I don't think there's,
Oh, I just think if I'm in a, and I don't think I am, but in general, if I'm in a place where I'm enmeshed with a lot of other people that are all enmeshed with me and this big enmeshed thing, and I come to like, oh, it's healthy for me to clean. If I suddenly cleaned, there's going to be a lot of loud voices from all around that are doing all kinds of stuff to reattach in a bad way.
I
No,
really
you
don't
don't think
think
so?
so. No, because we're, unless you're a hermit, we're interacting with people all the time and there's energy exchanges back and forth all the time. They're gonna, I don't think it makes, when we say that cut a cord, it sounds like we're cutting like a piece of a dog's tail, like it's gonna really hurt when we do this. And I don't think it necessarily hurts. It's just a way of resetting a boundary and then you're back to having free will and then reestablishing it later if you want to. Um,
I'm just
and
Yeah.
thinking about, yeah, like narcissistic relationships and how the narcissist totally feels that you pull away, and then, oh my gosh, the things they do to get you sucked back in and stuff like that. You know, in all kinds of unhealthy
exactly,
Yeah.
relationships.
exactly. And that kind of will tell you the nature of the relationship and why you should be running for the door and say, nope, sorry.
So I just met someone that has a lot of these relationships in their life that goes through this process. There will be stuff that comes up,
Well,
right? If
and a
we're
couple of
surrounded by
different things.
healthy people and healthy relationships, there won't be a big impact, big negative
Right.
impact.
But
Yeah.
if the way that you got any kind of connection when you were growing up was because and you were with narcissistic people, then that's your filter and you tend to won't recognize any other style of relating because that's what you got trained to do. Um, so and additionally, on top of that, like Kai was talking about, if you never cut a cord, then you've left your energy all these different places. Literally, some of the work that happens if you're going back in to do trauma work is to take that conscious energy that got stuck in that time period and release it and bring it here into present time. You'll find that, at least it's been my experience, and pretty much I've seen that with other people I've worked with. We've got little parts of our consciousness stuck in all different time areas and time zones and levels of age, where that kind of got snapped off, if you will, or just removed from the person. And when you go back in and start doing the work and reclaiming those pieces of yourself, I feel like it unhooks a lot of chains that keep pulling you backwards because that energy is still tied to the past. And when you do that, and part of the whole work is to bring yourself into present time and say, I am here in present time. I've got this little part of me. We're here together. And you're reabsorbing and bringing it home, those parts that were stuck, to bring them home, which is extremely powerful work to do.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things that we're talking about here, which is like what Crystal mentioned is like I view that as like a soul retrieval from a shamanic perspective, like going back and getting the pieces of your soul. But when I think about chords, it's like it's an active, participating, present day type thing that like literally like energy is like rolling down, like like you've turned on the water hose and it's the water's literally going down the hose to this other person. And so what I meant earlier about like retrieving that energy back is partly what Crystal was just talking about, but it's also just a matter of like whatever has been siphoned away from you that went to this other person that hasn't been used. Technically, it's your energy, and you can call that back. When I've done that, literally, I feel like a boost of energy. Like whenever I do that, I can't sleep that night because I'm like so pumped up. And so like if you are in a relationship where where you have a lot of cords and you feel tired all the time because of all the connections that you have, like you cut those cords, you call your energy back, and it will be like a boost. Most people that have done this, like they're just like, yep, I feel like I'm high because I have so much energy right now
Yeah.
and I can do all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, now your next step is to choose who you want to connect to, choose what that connection is like. In other words, if you start to feel like too much of your energy is going to that person and you're not getting anything back, then that's the point where you need to evaluate that relationship. Maybe that communication stuff comes into play. And if they don't want to communicate about it, then you cut the cord again and make sure that if it reestablishes in a much more restrictive way. Because you can determine what kinds of cords you attach to people. It goes along with that level of closeness, right? The level of intimacy, right? Like there's the people who are this close, other people who are like, that kind of thing. And that's how you establish how thick your cords are to the people, depending on how close you want them to be to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we just had someone
Another
else
area.
join. So I just wanted to say too, we're having a conversation right now. It's about cords and cutting cords and energy hygiene and where is it good to do that? And it's good to do that all the time and how different people might respond. And it's free to ask general questions about what we're talking about, or if there's something else that you want us to bring up, go ahead, put that in the chat. Or if it's a totally new topic, chat would probably be great. Or if you have a question about the topic that we're talking about that's not personal, but a more general question, feel free to unmute and put your voice in the space or raise your hand. We'll call on you. Go ahead, Crystal, you're going to say.
The other area where sometimes I don't know if other people do this or not, but like if I move from a house, I take all my energy out of the house that I'm moving out of and I take it with me. And I also thank the house, but new car, old car, if I've been working on a job, then I make sure I'm bringing my energy back with me from that job. We just kind of don't think about that kind of stuff. And that's another place where energy can get stagnant and stuck.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm someone that's generally considered to have so much energy already, and I have so much energy like tapped out in all these places. Or I just so as you talk about it, these are things I've never done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I have
I
because
bet you have. Yeah.
well, I mean, because of what I do, like it's really important for me to kind of keep track of my energy, right? So I like yeah, like when I left this one place I was living, like yeah, I made sure like I actually the people who were moving in after me, like I made sure that they moved into a clean space. Like I cleaned the space so that nothing of us was left there so that they could imprint their own energy on the place. And then when I moved to another place, I cleared that space out and I actually put up an energy shield on the house. And the funny thing is when I left there, I'm just like, yeah, I was like I pulled all our energy out and I dropped the shield and I left on the last day. And people were like, "Oh yeah, it's been pretty good while you've been here." And I was like, "Yeah, watch what happens after I leave."
Yeah. Yeah. The critter extermination.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Hmm.
got a question, Kai, about that. So
Mm.
to me, it would seem that if one did not clear one's energy from a place or to me, it feels almost like it leaves a trail behind you that something could come in and like follow that trail and kind of use it to find you.
Yeah, if the person is inclined to such a thing, then yeah.
I was thinking of entities as well.
Well, that's a little bit different because usually if it's attracted to you, like, if you're like walking down the street or something and it's noticed your energy, then it would automatically attach to you. It's not like, it would follow you home. It wouldn't get lost,
Yeah.
if you moved, it would just follow you. Um, but yeah, it's more like if the person who moved into the space that you were previously wanted to track your energy or, you know, tap into your energy or whatever to they could do that. And you could muscle test and figure that out if you've got any attachments from a previous place where you've lived or previous place that you've worked or whatever.
Yeah.
And then if you did, then you can just pull the energy back. The other thing is, and I talked about this with Susie Parker Goins years ago, and we talked about when you pull energy back, like your own energy back, what you want to do is you want to clear it before you take it back in
Yes.
because it's actually been, like living with another person and flavored with the other person's energy, so to speak. So
Yeah.
you kind of run it through like a shower before you bring it back to you, and then you can take it back into your energy field.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify a few examples, then we have a question in the chat. So if one has a relationship with a family member still, and a bunch of it's not healthy, or if one has like an ex, but one's still interacting with them because of a relationship with a kid or something like that, you generally still recommend clear everything off and then reconnect the things, clear them and reconnect things
Yes.
so that it's healthier relationship, healthier for you. Hopefully it's healthier for the other people too. That's their business.
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah,
like if
clarify.
you establish a boundary that's comfortable for you, then they should be also comfortable with the boundary unless there's some, narcissistic tendencies, and that's a whole nother thing. But
And just
I mean, like you have to have your own, you know, again, it's that intimacy level or whatever. If you want this type of relationship, then you have to energetically set that boundary. And if they don't like it, oh well. But that's the boundary that you're setting for it. And that is the level of courting that you will allow.
and one has
And
to be comfortable with the oh well consequences.
yeah, well, the thing is like if the person is your ex, obviously, then you're at least semi comfortable with the fact that it's like that that they don't like stuff that's happening, right? And so yeah, I mean everybody has to kind of play it by ear, decide what it is that you want to do and how you want to do that and where your boundary is and where you're willing to be flexible and where you're not. It's all about priorities and determining what's healthy for you
And I know,
regardless of the other person.
and Crystal, when I was saying the oh well consequences, I know like it looked like I get something was coming up and you were around that. I'm just aware that their energetic impacts of our actions. And when I take an action that's,
Bless you.
That's you.
I love it, sneezes in anger. So if I take an action that has an energetic impact, parts are my responsibility, parts are not my responsibility, sort of like what I want to say. If it's someone that I'm choosing that I want to continue interacting with, like I have to take responsibility for my part. And so it may impact them in a way that's unhealthy and I don't want to interact with that anymore. And I'm willing to lose the parts that are good because it's has whatever negative impact it has. And then I tend to think if I go into this knowingly that it, I feel like it's better if I go in realizing that the relationship may change in ways that I don't anticipate and that I don't want. Whereas compared to if I go in ignorantly and then I surprise myself. I'm better off if I go in with like acceptance that I may lose or may change in ways that I don't anticipate. Like I'm able to
Well,
be
if
more
you're
responsive instead of surprised.
right. So people that haven't done a whole lot of internal work, their parts will show up instead of the conscious self. A part will step forward and potentially, like if I call it, you're the vehicle and you're the driver in the car, a part will step forward from them and like want to take the wheel. And if you try and talk to them, that part is not wholly fully present and it's coming from a reactive place from the past, and you're not going to be able to have the kind of conversation you're hoping to have if that's the level of emotional intelligence where they are. If they are reactive and parts are running the show, you're not going to be able to make much headway at all.
Right, but if I don't, I guess if I don't, maybe what I'm getting to is if I don't accept that ahead of time, chances are I'm just going to bring up other parts and I'm going to suck back in a negative way with them. So the
Well,
more that
yeah,
I shift in that in myself, the better off I'll be.
yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's just a matter of there are times when we're not even that much aware of it. It's just that like there's something that's not right here and I can't figure out what that is.
Mhm.
And sometimes like when I get like that, I just cut all the cords anyway. And then I figure it out. Because it gives me the space to figure it out. Because sometimes when you're in this weird kind of like area where you're like, I can't figure out what the problem is, like, is it me? Is it a boundary thing? Is there a discussion we need to have? And I just don't realize it. It's like, okay, cut all the cords. And then the issues then become clear. Because to me, I look at it like, okay, what are the priorities? What is that really about? Because now I don't have any external energy influences, and it allows me then to just use my own energy to think about what I want, what I'm doing, what is happening, like what are my senses telling me, what is my perception of this situation, and then I can kind of figure out what I want to do going forward. Real quick though, I do want to address Mandy's question that's in the chat, and she said, "Can you clarify muscle testing to figure it out?" For those of you who don't know what muscle testing is, there are a million uh, you know, videos on YouTube about it. But the way I choose to do it is, or the way that works for me is, I actually put my two fingers together like this. And so I do this, and it's like, if it's a yes, it holds firm. If it's no, it goes through. That's how I muscle test. There are lots of different ways to do that. But how would I test if my energy is still in another home? So for the previous home that I lived in, is my energy still there? No. Okay. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
So it's all about the art of asking questions, right? Which question to ask. And often people ask multiple questions, getting at it to see if there's congruence with the answer.
Yeah. Yep. And so, and it's, so basically that just showed that I cleared all my energy away from that place.
Mhm.
And, so now my energy lives here with me. And if you want to, and you can do that for anything. So like if you want to check to make sure that you've cleared all your energy from a former job,
Mhm.
or something you've owned, say for instance, and I do this too, like when I moved, I gave like a ton of stuff away to Goodwill. I stripped my energy from all of it.
Mhm.
And then I actually infused it all with really good, loving energy so that whoever took it home was able to like have it and enjoy it and you know and really get the energy from it. So yeah, it's in from an energy perspective, if you are an energy person at all, like be cognizant of where your energy is, what it does, where it's going, and how to preserve it. Because like I said, to a certain degree, I mean, it's I don't want to say that it's finite, but in a way it kind of is. Because you know, we only live so long. And I mean,
Hmm.
even though we can channel as much energy as we want to, it's like it's still our energy for our use, and then we get to direct it where we want it to go. So if you're just kind of leaving it around like socks, um, you know, that's not to your benefit. So, um, you know, pick up your socks, people.
Well, it's like the idea of cords or like hoses. We said hoses earlier, and if like we have a bunch of hoses that are dripping out in all these locations, right?
Yeah,
There's less that's here that's right for other things.
that's available. Yeah,
Yeah. There's
yeah.
another question that came in. So it's at the so if there's a house that's owned and one's not living there, one's immediate family isn't living there, but one owns the house, and of the people that are living there, in this case, there are suicides in that house. So just some challenging energy that's happening in that house, right? So some people in property and the property is used by tenants for things they don't want. What
Oh yeah.
like what is the thing to do with the energy there?
Oh, I would have cleared that house as soon as it was possible because the any place that has had something traumatic and tragic like that, such as a suicide or a murder or um, any type of violent activity, like even if it's like domestic violence kind of stuff, like that leaves an imprint big time on a property. And so, you know, which the thing is like that could also be influenced by entities because a lot of times when people commit suicide and do violent things, it's because they are affected by an entity of some kind. So, yeah, I would have cleared the property immediately and not allowed someone else to live there until it was cleared because even though the people who subsequently come after them may not be suicidal, but it might turn and the energy might start with domestic violence, or it might be self harm in other ways, or it might be, you know, like it can manifest in different ways. So the energy of the house could, you know, could just get worse. And the thing is, if it is entity affected, they attract more, which can make it even worse for the people who live there. So you could have like nightmares and odd behavior and you know, on and on. It just gets worse as time goes on.
And here's another question too. So if it's one's property, there's clearly an energetic connection between like me and my property. So if there's something over here that's a mess, is there a way that it connects to me then, since it's energetically connected? There's not just the people that are in that property next.
It's entirely possible because, especially if the property is like family property,
Mhm.
like if your family live there, then yeah, there would be a connection to the family, to the land and the house and all that. So that's definitely a possibility as well. Um, you know, it may or may not affect depending on what's going on. I mean, sometimes if it's like I said, if it's entity driven, sometimes it's more about location, like whatever's in the house, whoever's there, physically there. And if the owner doesn't spend any time there, then it may not make any difference.
Mhm.
But if um if their family members live there or you know very close friends live there, there is an energetic possibility that
Yeah.
the owner could be affected as well. It's not
And I say,
likely, but it's possible.
and the clearing can happen long distance. The clearing can happen without approval of everybody that's connected and involved. And yeah, so if
Yeah,
anyone here has that situation or anyone listening, yeah, it can be
yeah. I
addressed.
mean, like you can have somebody come and walk the property if you want to. I mean, that's something that I do and I don't have to. I do everything energetically, but and you know, depending upon what's happening, like you can always just check with, like if the owner has been to the property and like they can determine like how it feels. Like if it feels really dark, then I'd be like, get somebody else, like get a professional to do it. But if they go and the energy just feels like stagnant or it feels like it's sad, they could probably just do the clearing themselves. With some sage or some other process that they want to do. Sometimes I tell people, if you want to just drive negativity out of your house, throw a party. Like just invite all your friends over, tell them to bring their screaming kids, whatever, and just like have a barbecue, have a great time, and just everybody just enjoy the heck out of yourselves and tell people, you know what? I need to get this house clear. And so what I want us to do is just to come over and have a great time.
And
That's
I'm a little distracted by some things that are happening in my space at the moment. This is great, the energies that are coming in. But I'm going to say, so someone said they've had two people try to clear their home's energy. So there are different ways of clearing the energy. You may have been talking about like what else to do. Maybe that was after it's cleared, or just what suggestions you have about different ways of clearing things and how people could know what they've done before and what they might try that's different.
Yeah, well, it depends too upon like who did you get? Because okay, so here's the primary problem that I come across, which is somebody comes over to clear the property, and what they do is they don't actually like clear the property and send whatever it is to like God's light or some other container. Okay, what they do is they clear the property, and whatever was there moves next door. And then when the good energy that the clearer has brought in disperses, then they come back. So they just wait outside. The boundary is what happens. So that yeah, so I don't know. It goes anywhere from like 2 to 6 weeks, and then they're back to square one
And
because the thing just waits.
Yeah.
and I know I've heard something, so it sounds like a combination of sending the energies away somewhere that's clearly away, and then also I've heard some people, I don't know if you all talk about refilling with a positive energy that really is stable in here and not just is going to diffuse away. And maybe
Yeah,
there are some
because
things to do to maintain that too.
yeah, because what happens is like sometimes they'll like, yeah, I cleared the space, and then they leave an energy vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So things then get sucked in. And it's like, and if you've got something waiting outside, then it gets sucked back in.
But this again
So
is our
yeah,
personal journey and all the work we have to be able to tolerate and really come to appreciate and enjoy and know we're worthy of a positive energy, right? Or we'll do something that makes it messy again.
yeah. So, what I do is like I clear the property and then I call in like energy that's for the highest good of the property and the people and all that and just fill it to the top.
Yeah.
And then there's also an energy barrier so that the energy inside can stabilize so everybody can get used to having this level of energy in their home. And then once that energy has established and the field drops off and is the leftover energy is given to the earth, and they're living in this really wonderful energy that they've been promoting the whole time. But again, eventually the energy will disperse, get used up or whatever, unless they start throwing parties and that kind of thing. But but then for the most part, they're living in like a healthy, energetic environment. And that's what it is. So yeah, it's like if you clear your house, refill it. If you don't, it creates a vacuum. I always put a shield on the outside before I start clearing so that nothing escapes.
Yeah.
Because things like as soon as I energetically I show up at a location and things start scattering, things start running. And so I put up a barrier to keep everything trapped in, scoop everything out. I send everything to source and then I refill it with good energy. And like I said, I pack it and the shield that I put up is always at least a foot outside the boundaries of the property, a foot below underground, and above the whatever the property is. And that it doesn't matter if it's an apartment, if it's a house, if it's a condo, it doesn't matter.
Right.
The other thing that I've done, which I think is similar to what you're talking about, Kai, is I actually talk to my house and I make a covenant with my home, and it's like appreciating that the home is here, because to me, living spaces are built with intent. They're built to be occupied, and they're happier when they're fulfilling their intention, which is to have people in there or energy in there. So when I move into a new place, then I quote unquote introduce myself to this property. Here's my energy. Um, I want to work together, that the energy that comes and goes to this property, in and out of this house, is a positive, healing, good energy, as opposed to critters that want to come in that I don't want in my home. And I've found and
I
I've
have a
found
critter that just came into the attic, and that's what I'm dealing with. There's a little crawl space in between, and so we're anyway. It is funny, and I'll say more, but go ahead.
So when I set that intention with the house, I just feel like we're on the same team about providing safety and a safe space for the house to exist as well. Especially when you say that you do it like a foot out all the way around, it's like, yeah, that's that nice container for the house as well. Um, yeah, yeah. And I tend to call them critters.
It's great. I know. I just literally have a critter. I'm just gonna say just for comedy. Well, so we are trying to figure out if it was on or in. It sounds like it's something that's in. But the other day, it was just a few days ago, literally I was sitting here working on my computer, and all of a sudden critter P came flying down from the ceiling and landed on the edge of my computer that's not right on the keyboard. I grabbed it the other way. And so it just came back while we're working on all this stuff. So
Oh
yeah, it's
God,
totally
no.
funny. So I pulled the computer back. So I'm like, all right, is it coming again? Like,
Wow.
so yeah,
No.
while we're talking
Wow.
about it, right? All the oh
Well,
my gosh. Well, I know. So we're here at the end of our 2 hours together. So just is there anything else we want to say in terms of pulling this all together and tying this up? And I just think we've maybe an overall theme of what we've been talking about today is where do we put our energy and where we can make a difference and how we can make a difference in the bigger world and how we really are responsible for and can make a big difference in our very local world and how we have more energy to do what we want to accomplish here.
I think moving through the world with an awareness of energy, and also the awareness of the impact that each one of us brings to any situation with the amount of energy or frequency that we're carrying. Um, and be more intentional, I think, about how I spend my energy. Um, is this I was watching the Great British Bake Off, and whenever they're eating something, like especially if it's a dessert, it says this is worth the calories to eat this because it tastes so good. So I'm just thinking, if I'm spending my energy, I want to spend it that it's worth the calories that I'm spending my energy on. So it's being having discernment too about your energy, and what you're doing with it. If you're walking around super hacked off about something and you're just shooting angry energy everywhere, that's not a good thing to do. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to just be more conscious about the kind of energy that surrounds us, because that's the environment that we live in, that we breathe in, that we function in. And
Mhm.
if it's not good, then we need to change it
Mhm.
in whatever way we can,
Yeah.
however we need to do that, and if that means that we cut all the cords and that kinds of things, that's what we need to do, because from an energy perspective, it's not just cords. I mean, there's lots of little kinds of energy things that can attach to us
Mhm.
that that harm us, manipulate us, that can affect our energy, that can affect our physical ability to function. And it looks like different things to different people. I mean, like I've seen things like, you know, I talked about this one person who it looked like she had like this yoke around her neck that you put on oxen when you have them plow the fields and stuff. And other people had things like chains around their ankles, like manacles around on their ankles, and that's just energy that's literally holding us back. And so for us, it is, as people of power, as metaphysicians, to look at our energy signature, and what could be draining it from us, and remove those things. And then that allows us to be stronger, better, more aware, and more able to affect our whatever it is ours to do. Because sometimes it's like, yeah, this is what you want to do, where you want to put your energy, what's important to you, but because you have no energy either physically, mentally, or spiritually to do anything, because you're leaking like a sieve, you can't accomplish what you want. Then it affects you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, because like, I want to do this but I can't, and that snowballs into a whole bunch of other stuff. So preserving your energy, I think, is probably the most important thing that we can do as metaphysicians.
We want to just add one thing to that, and one thing we talked a lot about, but I don't think we really touched a whole lot on just how to give yourself an energy cleansing. You can do it anytime, anywhere, any place. You can do it as often as you need to, whatever you want to do, but basically get yourself grounded and just visualize white light just pouring down into your space and just cleansing you. And you can even hold the intent, I'm releasing that which no longer serves. I'm releasing that doesn't belong to me. And this, don't forget your back. And it's like an energy shower, if you will, and bring it all the way down. And you let it all move out through the bottoms of your feet, all the debris. And when you're complete, you're sitting in like a little egg of white light energy. And you hold that for a while, because if you've let go of anything, then that energy kind of can come in like a band-aid for a while until you replenish that spot with your own signature. And you can do that before you go to sleep, when you wake up, if you've been to the mall, if you've been with people that you went to a party or something or whatever, anything, you can do that at any point in time. And you can do that with your dwelling as well.
Yeah,
And
and
there's
the
so many
other
different
part
ways
of
of
that,
doing this. Just that
yeah,
there's so
no,
many different ways of doing this kind of clearing.
yeah, and there's one more thing that we talked about that we never described how to do it, which is calling back your own energy.
Mhm.
And with that, like, you just basically call out to the universe, either in your mind or out loud, and just say, like, bring back everything that's mine. Like, I return what's not mine, and call everything back that is mine. And then you can visualize it as like all these little, however uh visual you want to look at it. Like, I kind of look at it like little blue blobs flying back at me. And what they do is, like, they actually pass through a shower. Like, if you're like, at the car wash, you have like those long showers that you pass through, that it comes through that curtain of water, and it's all nice and sparkly. And then, yeah, and then it comes back to me. So that's how you can view as your own energy coming back to you. But yeah, don't take it in until you've cleaned it.
Great, great. All right. Well, I think maybe there anything else just before we finish up, and then I'll have us each share our contact info, etc., for the video as we finish up.
Does
Anything
anybody
else
have any
about the topics from
questions,
today?
or?
Yeah. Did you any feedback? Did you guys anything you get
Oh,
something from this tonight, or?
I know it's been great. People have been asking different questions, and
Yeah.
some people
Okay.
are going to go back and rewatch the video, and yeah,
All right.
great. Well, yeah, let's go ahead
Yes,
and
I'm
say
gonna
again.
be
Oh,
one of.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was saying that I'm gonna be one of those people that have to go rewatch, because in the middle of it, my lights went out,
Oh,
and and so I've been running back and forth trying to pack kids' clothes to take them to somebody's house who has lights. But I just really want to rewatch the stuff you guys said about clearing the energies of the homes and moving, and like moving from one place to another and leaving it there or not bringing it back, etc. So I think that was really, really helpful overall. I didn't really hear all of it, but I think that will be really useful information for everybody, me including.
Yeah, the recording's going to go back up on YouTube. I just put a link in the chat, so sometime here in the next 2-3 days, I'll get that up on YouTube, so you can go watch.
Perfect. Thank you for that. You guys should do more of these, because it's so informative. In the beginning, how you guys were talking about the election, the fires, and news and stuff like that. It's not really. I don't really watch the news. However, when I do see something negative happening in the world, I have to kind of be like, okay, well, we came here to experience what we wanted to experience in this lifetime. So yes, somebody might be going to a tough time, And when I'm able to help, I help. When I'm not able to help, I think of it like that. Okay, well, this is the experience they chose to experience. And I'm hoping that their soul is evolving in that way, right? This is just perfectly what their soul wanted and needed, and then that's what they're getting. So it's not, I don't look at it as in, oh my gosh, I don't try to put like negative energy or negative emotions out there. Like kind of like I feel like even feeling sorry for somebody isn't really considered to be good use of your energy, because you're throwing that out there and you don't want anybody else to attach to or create it or make it worse. I'm gonna mute myself again because my kids are here, but that's all I wanted to say.
But yeah, it's how we can do something that's positive and impactful without giving away more than we want to give, giving the things that are not of service in the situation, how we can stay
Yes.
connected while not getting wrapped up in something in a way that's giving our energy away in a problematic way.
Yeah.
And we do have another one of
Just
these scheduled too. Sunday, February 23. Sunday, February 23. We are going to do this again.
okay. Thank you. I will put that on my calendar.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, we got another appreciate the topic. How do we get the video? Yeah, so the link is in the chat. And so just search on YouTube for Mimi Fairs. And if you're watching the video, you're already there. Great.
Any other questions, comments?
Is there a way to bring light back in the house? Is there energy that we can call back?
You can ask all your angels and guides to help you resolve whatever this is so that light can come back.
Good. Yes, good point.
I like the idea to have your friends over and bring all their loud kids to scream and have a big party.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
in the old one of the old Chinese beliefs, that the whole thing about the firecrackers and the drums and the lion dance and all that kind of stuff, like a lot of that is to literally chase away evil spirits, because the belief is that they don't like noise. And so if you have like a raucous party with lots of joy, people running around and having a good time, like that is what chases things out.
Yeah, all the positive energy. Yeah. Great. All right. Well, yeah, we would just go around again and say, just say your name and what you do and how people can reach you.
Okay, so I'll go first. I'm Kai. Again, I'm a Hawaiian Kahuna. My specialty is removing negativity from people, places, and things. The best place to find out more about me is through my website, which is handsonfire.buzz. That's handsonfire.buzz. And I have lots of articles up that you can read about different topics that I've written on. And that's the easiest way to get a hold of me and know more about me.
You got like a recording, like a class on shielding and all kinds of different resources, right?
Yeah, it's like I have books and that are up on Amazon. One is called When Things Go Bump in the Night, How to Tell If Your House is Haunted. The other is Shadow Work. And that has a book and a workbook. And then I also have an audio course that's on my Gumroad shop, which you can get through to my website. And that's about creating shields and circumstances for doing that and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and Kai's information's there in the chat for those of you that are here today. And Crystal.
Hi, I'm Crystal Novak. I'm a psychic reader, conscious channel medium, and I also do energy work. You can go to my website, which is openheartpathllc.com. I'm also doing a whole bunch of renovation on my site and other materials that I have available. So that's going to change in the coming future. But for now, you can still reach me at that site. That has my email and everything there. Yeah, I do pretty much anything. Can get information about pretty much anything. If you've attended this panel before or any MeWe events, you probably have seen me on the on the intuitive panel. I'm usually a regular person feature if the events are in the Puget Sound area. So yeah, I also want to just extend my appreciation to everyone that came this evening. That shows that there's interest in that we're doing this, and that says, okay, keep doing it. So thank you for showing up and asking your questions. Very much appreciated.
Great. And I'm Laureli Shimayo. I'm an intuitive eye reader, body psychology coach, and matchmaker. I run all the MeWe fairs. You can find out more about all of our events at mewefairs.com, MEWEFAIRS.com, about my eye readings work at intuitiveeyereading.com. You can find out about my matchmaking work on that site at matchmakingsoulmates.com. I'm excited to have all of us together and have this conversation growing and growing. Thanks everyone so much.